Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Fanatical Elves post-game show. Yeah, the Brownies, they took the loss out in Vegas, 20-16, and it's another heartbreaking loss for the Browns. So much to say. I'm riding solo today. This is John Suchan here, and we are the Fanatical Elves Network, part of Fans First Sports Network. We're going to have a lot more reaction from many of our other colleagues coming up in the coming days. I know Steve Gill's got his Dog Pound South show. We'll have the Dog Food Radio show with Jarrell with his reaction. Sam will have his Browns breakdowns. We've got Rod Bloom coming up with his Browns Blitz. Got my Johnny Cleveland shows. We got Stirring the Pot with Lou Marconi and myself. Sherry will be having her show, the Breezy Browns show, coming up on Wednesday. And then Noah Olson with his East Bank Sports show. We look forward to hearing all of that from everybody over the next week. Yeah, I've had some time to digest this like you. The game got over a couple of hours ago. I did a few shows this morning. Steve Gill was on the pregame show, and this season, let's just put it this way: on a whole, the Browns stand at 1-3 right now. You ask anybody who was a Browns fan going into this season, most analysts and most fans were very optimistic looking at this, including myself. However, I did look at this season and talked a lot about, well, what if this happens? What if this happens? What if the Browns suck up like they are doing right now? And it's hard for some fans and analysts to sort of, especially fans, to look at that and say, that's not going to happen. This team is so stacked with their roster. We've heard this time and time and time again. Now, a lot of you will immediately come back and say, oh, it's the injuries. It's the injuries. Oh, we're just decimated. And for God's sakes, yes, I know we are. But if you watch that game today, Deshaun Watson had plenty of time, most of the time, to make good throws. Now, I'm not putting any blame on Deshaun, though there were moments, again, where people are going back and analyzing what Watson was doing and where, even in that last play, you stop the screen and you can see that there are Browns players getting ready to get open or are open, but Deshaun's reaction time, maybe he didn't see it, or maybe he was waiting for the play to develop. But again, it wasn't Deshaun's game today where you got to lay most of the blame on him. Deshaun Watson made some mistakes, but not many. He did a lot of things with his feet. Kind of played it to where, he gave the Browns opportunities. But again, they just couldn't punch it in. We can start and stop with the late play in the game. I don't know, 4 or 5 minutes ago with the pass to Amari Cooper and the hold on Harris. Folks, it was just bull crap. I'll try to be fair with my language here, but ticky-tack. And when you want to think about what the Browns and what the NFL is doing and how the NFL treats these games, horrible. And if, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I don't think these games are fixed, but there are moments in time like this, that moment where I never saw a flag thrown, or when it was thrown. I'd love to see the angle to show when that referee threw that flag. The euphoria was great. It was a great moment. Before that all happened, Deshaun threw the ball, got it to Amari. Amari raced down after making a dreadful mistake earlier in the game. Amari seemed to have made up for it with an 80-yard touchdown, which would have put the Browns ahead. No telling what would happen that last 3 or 4 minutes. There were so many other factors in this game. From let's just start with the defense. Yeah, the defense gave this Browns team several opportunities late in the game, but that defense played like crap in the end of the first half into the third quarter until that fumble was recovered, and they did a hell of a job of getting that recovered and taking it in. Rodney McLeod, good job on his part. But there were so many dreadful moments. That drive that the Raiders had at one point, either I think at the close of the second quarter or the beginning of the third quarter where they just went all the way down the field, and the lack of effort was just horrible again. No tackling. Jim Schwartz's defense is not elite. Jim Schwartz has been discovered, and this team plays moments, and they don't seem to be ever on the same page. To their credit, they came together a little bit toward the end and gave the Browns offense opportunities. But again, we failed. This team failed. Now, this also comes down to Kevin Stefanski. There are a lot of people talking about Kevin Stefanski again and play calling. And again, we're at a stage right now where the Browns scored 16 points, actually 10 points on offense. This team is not scoring points on offense. And after a glorious start again, think about that, folks. They scored on their opening drive. Beautiful 15-play, 70-yard drive. And we're all sarcastically going, well, there they go. The Browns scripted first drive. They scored a touchdown. Congratulations. Great job. And like clockwork, they got a field goal, which was great. But then after that, nothing. They didn't score the rest of the game, folks. Defense scored those other 6 points. Would have been 7, but usually reliable Hopkins, our place kicker, for God's sakes, missed the extra point. How often do Browns fans witness good things like that happen and then get spoiled by Hopkins blowing it for an extra point, which then forced the Browns to have to create something on offense to get a touchdown, which was not in the cards today. It did not happen. Now, I've been talking to some of my colleagues off air, throwing around the whole stuff about the Browns being cursed. I say that half-heartedly and snarkily. I don't necessarily believe that this Browns team is, or Cleveland is, cursed. But for God's sakes, man, we won an NBA title with LeBron. Thank God for that back in 2016. But it's so odd, right? Or the irony that the Browns were so dominant. And I know we're talking about 70 years ago, 60 years ago, but the Browns won 8 championships before the invention of the Super Bowl. And now when the Super Bowl was created, the Browns haven't even, they've sniffed getting to a Super Bowl, but they've never made it and made an appearance in the Super Bowl. And folks, I don't know, man. I'm getting older. You're getting older. Are we ever going to see this Browns team in a Super Bowl? I'm really having my doubts. My family, my children were watching the game today a little bit, and they were struck by the fact that I was not yelling or screaming. And I've tempered my temper, maybe like many of you, and you just sort of expect it these days. That's what we have now. I mean, you watch these games now, and if you're a young fan and you are, we have a guest. We have Jarrell. Thank you, Jarrell, for joining us here on the post-game show. I was just finishing my my snarkily not curse, but I feel for the young fans, especially who, like our colleague Noah Olson and others, who have watched the Browns, and sometimes things can be a struggle and early on watching these teams. But overall, I was just saying, I don't know if you caught what I was talking about, Jarrell, but the team, I'm not hanging this on Deshaun Watson. I'm not necessarily hanging this on Stefanski, though. I will say both had moments. I'm not real happy. Be right when you were coming on the air, we scored 10 points for the offense, and you mentioned that off air too. After the wonderful scripted first drive, like we're all expecting now, the offense went into the tank. How you doing tonight, Jarrell?
Not doing well. I mean, you look forward the whole off season, and you drink the Kool-Aid because they say, oh, it's going to be this, and it's explosive and it's juicy and it's this, and then 3-4 games in, have they even scored over 20 points?
Yeah, no, they have not.
And see, you mentioned the scripted thing. He's good at if he could script a whole game.
Yep.
He'd be good. He'd be a phenomenal coach. The problem is that he can't adjust on the fly.
No.
And Andy Reid, some of these other coaches that call their own plays.
Yeah.
They're masters at it. And
Yes.
he is obviously a novice. He doesn't, again, I can name, there's a couple of games that, are in my head, but the
Yeah.
Chiefs game in the playoffs, they lost that game 22-17. The Chiefs were held to 22 points. If I told you before the game started in 2020 that you're going to hold the Chiefs to 22 points, you would probably feel good about that because they still
Yes.
had Tyreek Hill.
Yes.
Same thing when they lost to the Packers. They held the Packers to 21 or 22 points with Aaron Rodgers. If I told you that, you would say, oh, we're probably going to win that game. The problem is that Kevin Stefanski, I talked about it in my show, he can't score more than 20 points consistently. And he's
Right.
dead last in terms of winning percentage, even when he does score over 20. So the defense did what more do you want the defense to do? I mean, 20 points. You can't get 23 points.
Yeah.
You can't
Now
get
I was complaining before. I don't know if you caught me, but I was saying that the defense stepped up in some big moments and gave the Browns again 3 more opportunities at the end of that game to win it. But I will say that the defense played crappy in moments where they gave up that one drive. I don't think it was at the end of the first half or whatever, or the beginning of the third. There was just terrible tackling, and the effort was it was awful. And this team can come together and play. And I to their credit, they created the turnover. And I was thinking, like many people, like the only way that they were going to win that game was to get some sort of turnover. And I did also mention, and I don't think these games are fixed. I say that snarkily, but for God's sakes, I'd like to see Wynn on that play to Coop when the flag was thrown, because I haven't seen a replay yet of when that flag was thrown by whoever, because that was announced so late, and I don't know if the TV broadcasters just didn't see it initially on the field, but you always, as a Browns fan, you watch these games, right? And, Cooper scores, you're holding your breath for that, the dreaded flag, and lo and behold, it came out, and just tough, and you thought maybe Cooper made up for me, because people are really bashing Cooper tonight, with, ball tipped, and he should have caught the earlier one, caught a couple of tough ones. What do you think about Cooper right now?
Well, I'm not worried about Cooper. He's still the best receiver on the team, and sometimes those things happen. The problem that I have with the offense, the passing offense, just in general, is that you had the play called back because of a penalty, and to answer your question on the broadcast, at least what I heard them say, it was the inside. So when they usually get you on the outside hand,
Yeah,
it was when Watson was kind of breaking out the pocket, he was holding them with the left, and he kind of pulled the jersey. So it was a hold. I mean, it was ticky tacky.
it could have gone even, but I think that's where it's like Browns fans feel, and I do, like, if it was against the Kansas City Chiefs, they're not going to get that call if it's Patrick Mahomes throwing the ball.
Right. But the thing, like, Kevin Stefanski has 48 minutes, right? And they had a big play to Cooper. They got called back. Why is that the only one in the game? That's the only one of the season, which goes back to my problem with Stefanski as a play caller. 1 in 4 games, you get a explosive play like that.
Yeah.
They should be dialing those up a couple of times a game, even if you're just taking shots. I bet you they're probably last in the league in drawing pass interferences.
Oh, they were. I think we talked about that. Yeah, they were one of the worst passing defenses coming into this game, and then they were losing multiple players. Now supposedly Elijah Moore's dad is being OBJ's dad. Did you see the latest post tonight? He's complaining about.
No, I understand.
He came out, supposedly, a lot of people have been reposting it, so I don't know if it's legit or not, but it seems legit. It has Elijah. It says it's Elijah Moore's dad. At least he says, and I don't know how much to believe in that, but he was just targeted once, and so he's complaining about that. But it's silly season, so I'm not going to take that. I'll take that with a grain of salt. But there are a lot of things that are out there right now. So where this game for you? Where did you see? I mean, I sat back and I was not feeling good the whole game. I never felt to the very end that they had, they might have had the momentum, but everything, again, that if I had seen more at the beginning of the game, where they get the 10 points, but then they continue to both sides of the ball do some good things, but they didn't. There was one opportunity where Stefanski had just let Hopkins hit a 56-yard field goal to put him up 10-0. They get the ball again. It would have been a 58-yard field goal, though he decides to punt. And so those are the moments where it's like they had just talked about how Hopkins cleared it by 10, 15 yards. And even the announcer said, well, I would have let him kick the ball. Give him an opportunity again. What the hell? Now, Hopkins missed an extra point. For God's sakes, these are the little things that, like Jarrell, for me, they just drive me nuts with Stefanski. I just think his inconsistencies are they're still there all the time. 5 years into this.
And even and I talked about it in the group chat, but that third down, like they had 3 timeouts. So even if you don't get this conversion, you don't burn the timeout. So what I've always heard the announcer say is, you give them 2 plays. You give them the 3rd down play and the 4th down play, so you already know what you're running, so you don't have to burn the timeout. So then that way, if you run the 4th down and you don't get it, at least you get your 3 timeouts and you get one more shot at it.
Yeah.
It's like we talked about in week 1, you had the not going for 2 thing. It's like, what is it? If this is supposed to be an analytics team, what analytics is he studying in crunch time?
I got a little excited when I saw Ken Dorsey at the beginning of the game with a play sheet in his hand, and I thought, oh my God, are they letting him call the plays today? For some reason, I hadn't seen Stefanski yet, and so I thought, just for a split second, maybe they gave the reins to Dorsey.
They need to, because I'm looking at the schedule right now, and you got the Commanders. I'm gonna be honest, I don't think they're gonna beat the Commanders.
No, they're going to get blown out. They're going to get blown out.
So that's probably a loss. Now, luckily, looks like the Bengals. He usually beats the Bengals.
Well, they got Philly before then.
Oh, I'm sorry. So
you got the Commanders and Philly. Philly just lost a bad game to Tampa. They're going to be wanting to get back in the mix. You got Commanders who got
AJ Brown out. We might could get them if they still.
The Commanders are playing. I'm scared to death to go play the Commanders right now. They're one of the hottest teams in football.
Oh yeah. So if you're talking about Commanders, Eagles, Bengals, Ravens,
Chargers, the Ravens are crushing Buffalo tonight.
You're talking about potentially going.
I think we're the worst team in football right now. I think we're the first. I think we're the worst team in the NFL. I think if you.
I can't say that. You got a solid defense. You can't say that. And shout out to Mike K. I think he's talking about Stefanski is the weakest.
Mike, here, put that in there.
Yeah, put that up. I think we have the worst coach in the NFL. I think that for sure. But do I think that the worst team? No, you still got a solid top 10 defense. Another problem. Yes, thanks, Mike. One thing, and I want to get your thoughts on this. Why, when you had Derrick Henry, Swift, Saquon Barkley, all these running backs become free agents this past season, why didn't the Browns at least try to go after one of them instead of saying we're going to ride with Jerome Ford? Don't you think they could have used some insurance?
Yeah. Well, and I know, okay, let's just go back to Jerome Ford just for a second, because I know Steve offline, we were talking to him, and he thought it was a good play call, and okay, it worked. It was a good play call where he ran around the end, and Jerome Ford has had a few of those moments. But for God's sakes, man, I was texting you guys all afternoon. Jerome Ford runs scared, or I don't know how to that's the word I come up with. He doesn't know how to hit the hole and go, and he's so indecisive. It's just drives me batty. I never feel confident when he has the ball unless he's going right through the A gap or the B gap. Other than that, when he stretches it, I'm ready for the 5-yard loss. It's just, and the fact that he got around, he has a nice burst. I thought for a second he might be able to actually take that ball and go for the touchdown for a split second. But this is where Nick Chubb is so much better than when you see someone like Jerome Ford. So I do think that, some people are saying, well, might as well not bring back Nick Chubb because our offensive line is devastated. I don't agree with that. To be honest, I don't know what you saw, Jarrell. I thought that Deshaun Watson had some time today.
Yeah, I thought they played better. Now, Crosby was out, so that you could be playing with a little fool's gold there. But
true.
I think they looked better. The problem is that this is one of those games where last year it seems that they won a game like this, where it's kind of close, it's nip and tuck, and
That's a
then
great point.
right, they found a way to win a game like this, or the game against the Giants. They found a way to win it. It seems like that particular magic or whatever, where the balls just aren't bouncing your way, that doesn't seem to be the case. And that's where I feel like your coaching has to be able to get you over the hump. So when
Mhm.
Jerome Ford gets you inside the 20, if
Yep.
we're supposed to have an offensive guru, they say Kevin Stefanski is an offensive, he's not a defensive coach, right? He's an offensive minded coach, right? He's a Cal
Yeah.
Shanahan, he's a Mike McDonald, he's a Sean McVay, he's what's the guy in Green Bay? LaFleur. These are
Yep.
offensive coaches based on my understanding. Kevin Stefanski, if you want to rank coaches that call plays and don't, and the
Yep.
OCs don't, he has to be the worst in football
Yep.
when it comes to situational adjustments, when it comes to scheming people open, because aside from the Amari Cooper play, which really was a busted coverage, nobody gets schemed wide open. And that's I think that the thing that bothers me and that doesn't really bode well. I think this team needs a spark. And I think the spark has to come from saying to Kevin Stefanski, we've seen enough.
Yeah.
Dorsey calling the plays, or you're out.
Who said it's got to be the owner, coming from the owner that basically says we got to do this, because it really is magnifying itself. And like Mike even says, he doesn't pump up his players, but that's the motivational part of it, though, right, Jarrell? I mean, you see these moments, when things are going well, and but he's not the kind of guy, and I've heard this from a lot of other Browns fans and analysts who follow this team even nationally, and I kind of agree with them. Stefanski isn't the kind of guy that, he's a good-looking guy, and people like looking at him, or women do, or but
beauty pageant though.
But it's not, and that's right. And I think it's really. I guess here's the other part. The whole thing that gets me, and this goes back. And I know people want to say, well, this team is so much better than it used to be, or we've made progress, and we're not 0-17 and stuff. But all I could think about going into the season, and this is why I kept mentioning it, and I know I was pissing people off, like my colleague Lou, but it's the idea that this team coming into here, you got an 11-6 record. You're coming off a great record. You're coming off a great season. You got to the playoffs again with Joe Flacco and 5 quarterbacks. And like Steve was saying earlier, there's always something that you could like about last year's team. But then you're coming into this year, and it just reminds me so much of the 2020 year again, where you come into that, you lose to the Chiefs 22-17, all this stuff. You're in the pandemic. You're coming out of that. You got that opening week game in the 2021 season against the Chiefs. I was there in attendance. And let me tell you, that game, the Browns had it in the bag. They had control of everything, every part of that game to begin the 21 season. And they laid an egg. Chubb had an uncharacteristic fumble. But then after that, it was just downhill. And then we get into the whole Stefanski stuff. And from that point on, you had the next 2 seasons that were crap. You had players like Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham Jr., and yet you're sub 500. And so even though everything looked bright and sunny coming into this season, in my gut, I'm just like this, and it kind of gets to what you're talking about overall with Stefanski. It's like, and Jim Schwartz, even everyone's he's an elite offense. And okay, they were ranked number 1, and everyone was talking about even in this game, like they were ranked number 1. Well, it's not number 1 now. They're at the bottom probably, and even though they played decently today, it's just the season is just spinning out of control, and I don't see it getting any better.
Yeah, I think the Stefanski experiment, because our good friend Noah, he said that he would like to see Stefanski get another shot with another quarterback, and I just disagree with that, because Baker Mayfield he was a number 1 pick, regardless of if people feel like he should have been first overall. He was the first overall pick. He's now in Tampa doing this thing, and that's good for him. But he couldn't unlock Baker Mayfield, Odell Beckham, Jarvis Landry, and he had a Nick Chubb. He couldn't unlock them. They were 22, 24, whatever the rank was. And now we know there was a kind of a carousel of quarterbacks. We understand that. But, when you still had your opportunity, and I want to speak to the Flacco fans.
Yeah.
You had your opportunity last year in the playoffs, a team that you had beat 4 or 5 weeks prior.
And you crushed them.
And to use John's quote, you laid an egg. Now, who are we going to blame that on? Because Flacco threw 2 pick sixes, but Stefanski was dialing up the plays. So I don't really want to hear that, well, he hasn't had a quarterback that knows how to run his system. But my thing is, we've seen enough when these games get nip and tuck, because you're not going to blow out everybody in the playoffs.
So
today is an example.
So do you fire Stefanski this year? How much would it take for you to, like, for me right now, if they can't win on the road these next 2 games and they come back and they play the home game against the Bungles, and you're sitting at what are you 1-3 right now, 1-5, so you'd be 1-6 after
1-6.
You can't, like, I'm like, I'd get rid of him, and I don't know about Schwartz either. I'm not liking Schwartz these days, but maybe you can turn my opinion around.
I can't get rid of Schwartz because the defense has been the only thing keeping these games close. It's been the defense. And really, and again, I won't even go so far as to say Stefanski has to be fired, but at the bare minimum, you can't call the plays anymore. You're done with that. You just need to manage the game and oversee the game. Now, maybe you can veto. Isn't
it just a shock? I mean, it doesn't shock me, but it's like, this is where you really find out who the really good coaches are, and the ones that you talked about, the Andy Reids, the Mike Tomlins. I mean, I loathe the Pittsburgh Squealers. Okay. I don't like their football team, but Tomlin knows how to, and I think Mike even mentioned it here on his comment. I mean, Tomlin, Andy Reid, these guys just know it. And the players, I think they buy into it because they know that these guys know it. And I don't think these Browns players know, they don't believe in Stefanski and his play calling. And then they'll say, well, we got to execute. True. The players have got to execute. I totally understand that point too. But at some point you gotta part ways. And you want to maintain this because the Browns have been more consistent. You don't want to go, but we're looking at a 3-win season right now, maybe 4 wins. I mean, for God's sakes, you got to be real, Browns fans. I mean, those of you who are going, oh, it's still really early, folks. They're playing the Commanders on Sunday in Washington, the hottest team in football, and I know it's the NFL, but for God's sakes, man, we beat them last year, but this is a completely different team with a much better quarterback. You've got the Eagles, who are going to be hell to beat them in Philly. Forget that. You guys, Philly's not. Forget that. You're playing them in Philly. We never win in Philly. And then you got to come back and play the Bungles. Now, that's a possible win. The Bungles are floundering, so maybe you get a win there. So maybe you're sitting at 2-5. I know I'm projecting a lot, and a lot of you, especially even some of my colleagues, are probably thinking that I'm nuts. I am nuts. But I don't think it's unrealistic to say that you're going to be at least one. You're going to be 1 or 6 or 2-5.
I'm gonna put something I put on the screen last time. So basically, this is the under 19 points. So now Kevin Stefanski is 8-24 in games where he scores 19 or less.
Yep.
So again, when you're talking about, and this is what I wanted to ask you. So you see Harbaugh and Tomlin are ahead of him, right?
Yep.
Who is the best coach to you in the AFC North?
Right. In the AFC North, Mike Tomlin.
Yes. Who's the second best coach?
In my opinion, I'll never say Harbaugh because I loathe Harbaugh's.
Okay. So who would it be then if it can't be a Harbaugh?
Who would be
Taylor or Stefanski?
Neither. I would say Stefanski because he's better looking and he seems like he's under control, but he really doesn't. That's the other part of this. Like it's almost like a game. It's like this, this facade that some of these coaches play. Like he's looking at his Denny's menu and he acts like he's knows what he's doing. But he just doesn't he doesn't have a good feel, right? Like you talked about that last sequence at the end of the game, saving those 3 timeouts. They get up the line and they screw that up. Or even after the botched fumble, they weren't ready. They weren't ready. Again, late stages of the game. I mean, how far are we? I don't know. I'm getting off. But
that's coaching, and because to me it would go Tomlin or Harbaugh, whoever you want to say 1 or 2 is, and I would have to put Zach Taylor in front of him. They're both probably the same to me, but I think
Zach Taylor got to a Super Bowl, right?
Yeah, he did, but they didn't win it, so we're not going to put a lot of currency in that. What I'm saying is, Stefanski, you can make the argument he is the worst coach in the AFC North. At best, he's number 3. At best, there's no doubt about that. And with Tomlin and Harbaugh, you see the Ravens are destroying the Bills right now.
Yes.
You're with this current leadership.
If I take away my anger, yes, Harbaugh and yes, Tomlin are the best coaches in the AFC North. And everybody will say, "Oh, well, Stefanski got Coach of the Year 2 years in a row." I don't give a.
Who cares? Because you didn't get Coach of the Year. You didn't get Coach of the Year performance today, and so I sound like a broken record.
Yeah.
If you're talking about 7 losses, 7 losses is probably going to disqualify you from the playoffs. They got 3, so you got 4 left that you're playing with, and we just talked about the schedule. It's possible that they hit all 4 of them in the next 4 games.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, yeah. Well, hey, let's pause for a real quick break here. This is our post-game show where, Jarrell and I are having one hell of a conversation. We'll be right back. We're back here on the Fanatical Elves. Thank you for joining us here and following us. Please download our shows on Apple, on Spotify. Follow us on YouTube. If you haven't subscribed to our channel on YouTube, that would be great. We make big bucks if you download us on Apple, Spotify, anywhere you can listen to podcasts. We are sponsored by Hemisphere Coffee Roasters. Please check them out. We've got the Hemisphere link on the main X page of ours at the top that's pinned. Please click on that, and Jarrell and I get 15% back if you buy this amazing coffee where they shake the hand of the coffee farmer. They they get their coffee from all over the world. Companies up in Mechanicsburg, Ohio, great little factory up there. I've been up there, really wonderful people. So please buy their coffee because it's good stuff. I'm telling you, you will never go back once you drink their coffee. Jarrell, okay, so I know we're really depressing the fans right now if they're watching. Where do we go from here?
I'm going to put something else on the screen here. So this is the
Jarrell is our stat guy.
You got to have your stats. This is our over 20 point graphic here, and I don't know if you can take that banner off on the bottom.
Yeah, let me try to take it off. Yep, just a sec.
So we can almost guess, and we know every week is different in the NFL, but we can almost guess they're going to need at least 24 points to try to beat the Commanders in the event that the defense gives up that 18 to 23 point window.
Yeah.
And as you can see, of these coaches that we have on the graph here, Kevin Stefanski, he doesn't really cook up a lot of over 20 point games.
No, he does not.
If we look at the schedule, the Commanders had the potential to put 24 on your head. We know the Eagles had that potential. We know the Bengals have that potential. We know the Ravens have that potential. Mm-hmm. So the next 4 games, offensively, if your offense doesn't help the defense out, because at some point you're going to have fatigue setting in. You're going to have that's just part of it.
Yeah.
So at what point, to answer your question, where do we go from here? At what point do we say to the guy in charge of the offense, you're not getting it done, and you haven't gotten it done in the 5 years that you've been here because you haven't had an offense ranked higher than 19, I believe.
Yeah.
Passing offense, that is.
Yeah.
You got to. That's the only solution right now. And like Mike K said, I'm not going to say he needs to be cleaning toilets just yet, but I'm almost there. That was a good one, Mike K. I'm almost there.
Now, you don't believe in any of this sort of going back to the whole curse stuff. I mean, I say it snarkily and not seriously, but when you see people like Baker Mayfield, and I'm happy for him, and then Joe Flacco, it just accentuates the issue right now. And a lot of people are who are not Deshaun Watson fans will say, well, this is karma. Karma's a bitch, and I don't know. I mean, today I thought Deshaun Watson actually, in my opinion, watching that game from start to finish, I felt like he seemed like he was happier and making some good decisions, doing things with his legs when he needed to keep the ball rolling. I'd never heard of the tight end he threw the ball to until today. Whiteheart, I think.
Yeah,
they brought him. Yeah, a kid played at can't even remember what college he played at, but he was drafted a year ago, and I think this was his first. Well, it was his first touchdown in the NFL. But anyway, God, I love seeing Baker, but it just grinds at you when you see these guys having success and doing things. And this goes all the way back to what you're already talking about with Stefanski and what he does with his offense. You see where these guys go, and look what happens. And Baker's throwing 3 touchdowns, running for a 4th. I mean, after I don't know.
So you're asking, are the Browns cursed? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. I mean, you just see all these things. I know Steve reacted pretty powerfully that no way. But I just think it's hilarious. I'm not hilarious at this point, but I thought Cleveland was cursed, and then the Cavs were able with LeBron to win the championship. I don't know. I mean, and you and I have talked about the endless times the Browns got close in the late 80s, early 90s. I think we always have that opportunity, but I fear in my 50s now that I'm not going to ever see the Browns get even to a Super Bowl. And I hope I'm wrong, but that you might be 100 years into the Super Bowl before the Browns actually get into a Super Bowl. And to think that the Super Bowl was created a year basically after the Browns were such a dominating franchise, winning 8 championships. It's just a crying shame that this is where we're at. And yet here we are, loyal to the, end, trying to cheer on our team and figure out what they need to do to get better. But it's hard.
Well, let's be honest. So we know we can't really talk about the team being moved, but we know that was a big point. So you basically got a franchise, an expansion team in quotations. Yeah. So 99 was basically a whole new organization and all that. So if you really go back through those years, I think the problem with the organization that they've actually solved now, I think they've solved what the problem was for 20 plus years, was that they were looking for this quarterback to be the savior rather than go. You want to swim with the current. The current in the AFC, nor really in the AFC, because New England won 6 Super Bowls, not primarily because of Tom Brady, at least the first week. It was the defense. They had solid defense. Yeah. Pittsburgh, solid defense. Baltimore, solid defense. So I think right now the reason the window is still open, even though the offense is putrid, is because you got a solid defense. As long as they keep defense mentality first.
And that's why it was disappointing. I forget which drive it was, but they literally, in my opinion, the defense looked like it gave up in the one series. I'm trying to remember which one it was. It was either the second quarter or the third quarter. When did they? There was something. I know what it was. At the beginning of the third quarter. At the beginning, remember this? The very first series that the Raiders had the ball, Alex Wright got called for a hit to the helmet on the quarterback. It was 3rd down and long. It was an incomplete pass or something, and then it gave them new life, and they went down and they took the lead on the field goal. And that was they scored a touchdown. Was it? When was anyway, that was just one shift there. And I just, when did they score their touchdown? Was it the first where they ran the guy? They had 2 touchdowns, right?
Yeah, it was 10-0. And then Did they kick? I can't remember. They kicked the field goal first or scored. I can't remember.
They kicked the field goal first, and it was the second touchdown where he caught the ball, and then it was just piss poor tackling by the Browns, and he just kind of walked in, and the two guys that were down at the goal line didn't even. I mean, got their hand. They were playing flag football, and I'm like, "Holy mother of God, that's just crap," you know?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you saw the Bengals game. Jamar Chase scored a touchdown because it was piss poor tackling. I just think nowadays they don't wrap up like they used to. I think it's like hit stick, shoulder type tackles. But
Jordan Hicks got hurt because he didn't wrap. You know, he got hurt in that one play. He tried to make the tackle. Remember, there was a play when he got hurt in the first half, I think, and the guy went for 10 or 20 yards running. That was the other thing. We didn't even talk about that, Jarrell. But the running game, our defense against the run game, that team was averaging 50 yards a game. Now, I know it was only 3 games, but they ran wild on us defensively. So that's where, while the defense played well, that really hurt, especially in that first half.
Let's take a look at where they're ranked currently after this game.
Well, they probably bumped up quite a bit.
Says right now the Browns are, I don't know if it has today's game factored in because it says only 3 games, but they were 19th in team defense coming into the game, 13th against the pass.
They ran for 152 yards against us today. They ran over 100 yards more than their average. Now, I granted 50 yards isn't a lot, so they're gonna come up a little bit, but the stretches just in that second and third quarter that were just god awful.
Yeah, I mean, I believe in the philosophy of defense, bend but don't break. So even if you have a day where you give up close to 200, you still held them to 20 points. Your offense, at some point, you gifted them a touchdown. At some point, Kevin Stefanski has to go, because if I played for that defense, I'd be pissed because like we're out here putting our lives on the line.
Yeah,
you continually ask us to bail you out.
Yeah,
we have to bail you out every single week.
Yeah,
because we give you a short field or whatever, give you a turnover. Y'all can't turn it into a touchdown or even a field goal sometimes, and then we got to come right back out here and bail you out. And in this game today, they bailed them out 2 or 3 times. It's AFC North.
Well,
is going to be, because right now it's about to start, taking shape. Pittsburgh lost. It looks like Baltimore's about to win. We're sitting at 1-3 with Cincy. These next 4 weeks are going to be critical because I really do think the season can be saved or it will end in the next 4 weeks.
Yep. Well, Jarrell, I hope you have a very good night. We got some of our frustrations out in this conversation, so that's always good. Appreciate everybody listening and watching us right now. We're going to download this, so please go tune in, share this episode with your friends and family. Talk about the Fanatical Elves Network, part of Fans First Sports Network. We're a bunch of great guys who just love, and great gals too, including Sherry, who love football. We just like you. We're like you, the fans, as well. And what you're talking about is likely what we're talking about right now. So, Jarrell, have a great night.
Thank you. You too.
Go Brownies.
Give up the play calling. Give up the play calling. Everybody in favor, say that. Give up the play calling.
Yeah, I want somebody to put that on him tomorrow again at the press conference. See you, Jarrell. Go Browns.